how does you as a music composer deal with those things, or is that thing real for the music composers?
For me, I always try to satisfy the three things, which is not always easy and not always possible.
Has it ever happened when your understanding of a project was different from what director's understanding of the project was, and it turned out that your understanding suited better?
One time that I had to walk away from a project because the director wanted me to write in a style of music which
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Thakkar show. Today we have with us Christopher Barnett. He is a very famous music composer.
not so famous.
His music is very famous. And today we will sort of learn about your journey and how what goes inside the mind of a music composer when they sort of think of a script or think of a situation that is given to them. Because if any one of us listen to any music, it's very interesting. It's very, the music has its own effect. But how it is very interesting to know that a music that gives a certain effect to a human was created by another human with a very abstract idea, with a very abstract situation. So for me, it is very interesting to know that story of how music is developed. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So when like we said, we want to understand how the backstory of how the music is produced. So when you, let's say, are given a script or any situation, what's the first thought that comes in your mind in terms of composing the music?
Well, when I receive a script, firstly, I'm reading the script to try to understand the story arc, and whether the story interests me. Up to now, I haven't really been a fan of reading scripts and then imagining music because I've always found that when I imagine music as soon as I read something or see something, and usually what I imagine in the script, when I see the first cut of the picture, there's a mismatch because the actors bring something to the story, and then there's lighting and there's editing and all these things. So I try not to read scripts, but having said that, the last couple of projects I've done, I have read the script, and I hold myself back from imagining music. I just try to understand what the director is trying to say, and then we discuss what they think the music will be, and then I'll kind of maybe throw some ideas, maybe I'll write something, maybe I'll send a playlist and take it from there.
Interesting. So what comes in your mind first? Is it like melodies or emotional arcs or rhythms?
Usually, it can vary. Sometimes it is melodies. Sometimes it's capturing the tone of the story. So, if it's a love story, obviously it's going to be quite gentle and sweet and soft. If it's horror, it's going to be quite ominous. If it's a documentary or a drama, then that's where it gets. Finding the tone can be quite a challenge. So sometimes I'll just watch the images, watch, and when I'm watching the first cut, it's in its very raw state. It's very unfinished. So I'm trying to establish what the story is and what the director wants, and I might just go away and just think about it and play the piano, play some things, and then once I feel I have some ideas, I may shape that into thematic material, so melody, some rhythm, whatever it might be. So it just depends on what the story is, really.
Can you give us one example of any of your project?
So I did a documentary with David Wilkinson called Getting Away with Murders about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And that documentary is about the Nazis who escaped justice at the end of the Second World War. This is the rank and file Nazis, not the head tier, but the rank and file. And many of them settled here in England, in Leeds, London, all over England. Some with the knowledge by the government of things that they'd done. So first I was sent a teaser trailer. So there was a few images. The film wasn't finished at that time. And I watched that and scored it. And then it got me thinking about the main story, the bigger body, if you like. And it's like, okay, what do I want to say here? So I went away and tinkled at the piano and came up with something which I feel is quite jazzy, orchestral, jazzy, experimental. So I wrote two pieces and produced them in my DAW, sent them to David, and he was like, no, these will never work. There's the wrong tone. I said, fine, no problem. When I get the footage, I'll score it. And then 3 or 4 months later, I get the first picture, and all those pieces had been inserted. It was like they worked perfectly. It's just like kind of a miraculous, and then he wanted to put them, all over the place. But that's an example of that. It's just finding the spirit of the story of what you want to tell, And then recently we just finished one called The Marbles about the Greek sculptures that are based in the British Museum, and this is about the repatriation of those, trying to get them repatriated back to the Acropolis, And with this one, there's a lovely opening shot of the Acropolis in Athens, and it's a drone shot, circle. So the instruction was to do something Greek. We were looking at doing something Greek, but then I decided, actually, I want to take the view on a trip through history, because it's the 18th century is when they were stolen. So I wrote a Baroque piece, which covered all that with a soprano, and everyone comments on that opening shot. Very very cinematic. So that's another example.
You do need a brilliant brain for that. So, I mean, like you said, working in documentaries and film where they have a certain side, a certain pattern of storytelling. As a music composer, how do you maintain the artistic side of the documentary and also keep it more authentic, uh, so that it is an authentic experience for the viewer and also merges well with the with the artistic approach of the director and the producers?
Yeah, it's a very delicate balance. I always say, especially to my students, that when working on a film, that there are three needs, three things that I'm trying to satisfy. The first is the director's vision, because they are the boss, director or the producer. And then the second is the film's need. So, when you watch a film, I guess with experience, you gain an understanding of what this story might need, which may be different slightly to what the director wants, and then thirdly, there's the composer's need. What does the composer want to say musically? If you take the composer away, then all you have is director in the film, and then there's where's the artistry, So for me, I always try to satisfy the three things, which is not always easy and maybe and not always possible, but that's always the aim.
Interesting. And a lot of time, certain emotionally intense project, we see a lot of time with the actors that a certain emotionally heavy or mentally heavy film does affect the actor's life or actor's mental health, at least for a short period of time, if not prolonged effects. How does you as a music composer deal with those things, or is that thing real for the music composers?
It doesn't really affect us as composers because usually we're the last person engaged. Um, but you do raise an interesting point. I did a film called A Dose of Happiness, which is about heroin addiction in Bulgaria and Sofia in the 80s, 90s. And this lady who was hooked on heroin for 8 years, it's a biopic, it's a true story. She kicked the habit and became a prominent journalist there. And at the time when she was an addict, she had a young daughter who you would sometimes fix up for her. And, fast forward to when we're making the film, the director is a friend of the daughter, and the daughter plays her mother in the film. So you can imagine the trauma of acting, her being her mother, and reliving all of those experiences. And they came over to London, and we had a coffee, and I was asking questions, so I could get a handle of what to do musically, and trying to be very, very careful, very, very understanding and sensitive to the information. So I can't say that I was involved with any mental health issues there, but I was very kind of aware of what of maybe that happening, because it can affect. It does have an effect. The year I did Getting Away with Murders, I also scored or co-scored with two friends of mine, Frank Ilfman and Jean-Luc Pinson. We scored another documentary called Speer Goes to Hollywood about Albert Speer, who was one of the architects, Nazi architects who built Berlin in the 30s. And so that was a dark tale. Getting Away with Murders was a dark tale. And then we had COVID, and then the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. So it was quite, even for me mentally, it was quite a tough couple of years dealing with all of that, being housebound and all of those things. Yeah, it was tough.
So how do you deal with it?
How do I deal with it? I have good friends. So good friends. I have a loving family. I keep my feet on the ground, and I do some spiritual practices. I chant and things like that. Meditate,
Oh, wow.
exercise. So all of these things.
Yeah, I do see a Buddha statue here in the
Yeah,
studio.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even when I just entered here, I mean, music for me personally is, I'm not very exposed to Western music, so my only exposure to the music is the Indian and the classical Indian music. That's that's the kind of exposure I had for 90% of my life till now. And so the Western music, I'm still kind of trying to understand how I feel and how I understand and how I work around with it. But music in general, when it comes to music, it does have a calming effect. And when I just came in your studio, it felt like it's peaceful.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's a lovely thing to say. Thank you. I'm just doing its job. Yeah.
Interesting. So you do chanting and meditation in your studio, I guess.
I do chanting and meditation anywhere I am.
Ah,
You know, wherever I go. So if I get a spare, I'll just sit, and even on the train tube, I'll just sit. And,
interesting,
yeah.
interesting. So, has it ever happened when your understanding of a project was different from what director's understanding of the project was, and it turned out that your understanding suited better uh, in the film or the documentary or in the project, or any sort of
Yeah.
uh, clash of ideas when it comes to working on a project where you as a music composer look things in a different way than what the director wants.
I think I've been very, very fortunate in that the directors I work with, we tend to work very, very collaboratively. So, I mean, a composer's job is to answer to the director, and you know, if they don't like something, we change. So we write, we rewrite, we revise. That's constant. But I've been very fortunate that the directors I work with is it has been a collaboration, and they have been very, very respectful about the music and my ideas as well. That you know, there's a lot of trust between us. I'm going to say there was only one time that I had to walk away from a project because the director wanted me to write in a style of music which I found wasn't appropriate to the documentary. The documentary is about people's lives, real people, and I just felt the music he wanted to kind of have this bombastic thing going on with the music, and I said I don't want to do that. So, you know, you can find someone to do that for you. But would have been like 25 years ago.
Wow,
Since then, you know, I've you know, as I said, I've been very fortunate with um, my directors, who I love very much. So yeah, very good.
interesting. How
Yeah,
is it different working from films and documentaries?
films tend to be genre. So you know, you have drama, horror, you have action. Documentaries, as I say, you know, I think you have to kind of be a bit more sensitive to the material and to the story, because after all, we are underscoring people's experiences in their lives, and also they tend to be quite lots of talking heads, so we have to be sensitive to the voices and try not to overpower what we're saying. So that's a challenge, because obviously, you know, you can have a pad underneath a voice, and that will do the job of supporting the voice and what have you. But at the same time, it's not very interesting musically. So the challenge is to write music, thematic, rhythmic, or whatever it is, link different topics in the documentary. So this one links with that one, and this one links with that one. You have different themes, and also make it interesting as a piece of work, a piece of artwork. That's the challenge. Yeah.
Interesting. So, what would you prefer working more on, documentaries or films?
I love both. It's not. I mean, I do a lot of documentary work. I've been doing a lot of documentary work, but I love both. I love films. I watch films every week. I'm watching
Oh wow,
2 or 3 films, and I love documentaries. I find that the standard for documentary storytelling is very, very high. Some outstanding documentaries that you learn a lot about different things, history and science, and all kinds of things, people's struggles. And feature films are just a piece of entertainment. You can kind of be a bit freer in how you go about it, because it's purely entertainment, unless it's a
right,
drama, which you know is quite has a serious tone. But yeah,
right. What kind of music do you listen?
I listen to what do I listen to? I tend to listen to the same tracks every day. I listen to some classical music. I listen to Jill Scott. She's an R&B singer. Um, I listen to jazz. I've got jazz. Branford Marsalis, Quincy Jones. Some Rolling Stones on my playlist. Grace Jones. So there are certain tracks that get me going. When I need to do something, I go to that track. That track gets me in the frame of mind, the zone. Then I listen to that, and I can attack what I need to do. If I'm working on a film, I might have a playlist of things which has a embodies something that I want to exude. I don't listen to one track over and over again, but there might be a playlist that the director and I are listening to.
So your playlist keeps changing based on the project.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you watched or listened to any Indian or classical Indian music?
I used to. What's the one about cricket? There's a film about cricket. I think it's
Is it more of like biography or something?
it's like a historical one. I can't remember the name. It's quite a famous film, and it was that scored by he's a famous Indian. Won an Oscar. My brain is gone.
A.R. Rahman.
A.R. Rahman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lagan, is it Lagan?
Lagan, yeah.
Lagan, yeah.
Yeah.
So going back 20 odd years, I used to listen to a lot. I mean, I live in a very Asian area, so I listen to a lot of Indian music. Not so much now. I don't hear much Indian music around here for some reason. But yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the Indian music sort of brings in to the music industry, which will be interesting for the West to pick up?
I think my interest is in Indian music from 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and before. I find that Indian music, not just Indian music, but I think music from many different cultures tends to be underlying Western in nature. So you have a Western beat, and then you'll have an ethnic melody or
Yeah.
vocal line or whatever it is, and that kind of turns me off a little bit. I much prefer the pure Indian
I can't agree
rags,
more.
because you have different rags with different scales,
Yeah.
and each rag has a different emotion or topic or title, and this is kind of used in a very similar way to the beginnings of film, where you would have black and white films played by a musician, and when there's a baddie on they'll play the baddie music, and then when there's a love scene, they'll play the same love tune, and every theatre would have that book, if you like, and that's what I loved about the Indian rags.
I cannot agree more, because that's the reason if I open my playlist and I show it to you, a lot of them are from the 60s.
Right. Yeah.
And very, very few are from like past 10-15 years.
Yeah.
Because even I kind of feel, I mean, there's no negative feeling towards the Western music, but it's almost like if I want to listen something authentic and not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously mixing something up and getting a very new genre out is interesting, but the mix should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why I love classical music, because it's authentically, classical or 20th century music is from that period. It's like going back in time and reading a bit of history,
Right.
So that's my approach.
Right. And you are also a mentor and educator. So what advice do you give to students or like emerging composer and like finding their voice, because music industry is now changing a lot.
Yeah.
Like you also said the Indian music and a lot of Eastern music which were in their own classical form are now westernizing slowly. Uh, in these kind of world, what would you suggest your student or any upcoming
Yeah,
composer?
it's really to um, study music. You know, listen to music from a wide range of cultures. Go way back to the origins. I was called depping a class this last week and listening to some of the students' work, and I say, what do you like? Who's your inspiration? And then one would say this one or that one, and they say, oh, when they say old school or vintage, they're really talking about in the last 10 years. I'm thinking, well, that's new to me, you know. And then I would listen to their inspirations and find that their inspirations had inspirations which were further back, you know, in time. So I would say that, okay, you said this person, now listen to this piece of music from this artist, and they would listen to it, and then they would see the link, you know. So you see the progression of how it's got from there into the present.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, first of all is to study, open your mind to different things, listen to, you know, as much as you can, and delve far back, learn the history of music and, you know, how it's grown, and then you'll find that that deepens you as a musician. It deepens you, you know.
Right. I mean, this may be the dumbest question I've asked, but when talking about the history of music, like, uh, I have zero, I have done zero studies in music, and I'm not close to any of the students who do music. But this is what my thought is. Like, when we see, for example, when we see a sad tone, we hear the sad tone like 50, 60 years ago, and we see a sad tone in the modern era. uh, there is something that is very similar fundamentally, but then you can also sort of distinctly differentiate the era of that music when you hear it. And it is very, very interesting that the fundamental has remained the same, but how it is being perceived has evolved generationally. Like, is it correct what I'm saying, or
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's styles, isn't it? It's what was fashionable, you know, in the 50s. Sad music, as you say, is not so fashionable today. So I think now, as you say, sad music is much more subtle now. It could be sad music, it could be action music. It's much more subtle now than it was, say, back in the 50s, because the audiences are much more savvy. They're much more in tune with themselves and emotionally, and they understand things differently. And the you know, I'm using the word fashion, but fashion is not the best word. But you know, the fashion is to a less is more approach. Whereas in the 50s, in 50s Western music, it was loud, it was very, you know, expressive, you know. So yeah, that's just how society has evolved.
because how sort of lyrics uh, work with the music, because when we talk about music in general, the experience of it, there a lot of songs that we say, they the lyrics also give a significant amount of impact on how the music is perceived by the listener. And obviously, being an Indian, the Indian music is very in tune with singing. Like, when we talk about ragas and everything, they are meant to be sung. The music is meant to be felt with the lyrics. Uh, and that is what I have been grown up with. So I want to understand your perspective on how do you as a composer, when it comes to when it comes to giving a music to any song, how does a composer think on that context? Does lyrics give, like, have a huge impact on how the music is being curated or the music is being changed?
I haven't thought about that, but I guess, I mean, I worked with a soprano in on the marbles, but there were no lyrics. It was wordless. With lyrics, it just depends on the genre of the song. I think lyrics. I think an audience does have a shortcut to an emotion when there's lyrics. So if it's a film and it's, again, going back to the romantic, and there's a lovely female voice which is heartfelt, it immediately goes to the heart. You know, if it's a hard hitting gangster thing and there's some rap music and it's, you know, there's a rap going on, again, it's a shortcut. So I mean, I haven't, you know, the last thing I worked with songs, I wrote some lyrics, was it was a romantic comedy, and I wrote some jazz pieces, and there was a male singer and a female singer, and there was some interplay in there in the lyrics and the song, quite fun, and you know, and the audience was singing the songs on the way out of the theatre. So yeah, I guess you're right. There's you know, there's that connection, immediate connection to the material through the songs. Yeah.
Interesting. So, do you have any questions for me at the end, or any last piece of advice for anyone who's listening?
Last piece of advice. Um, Last piece of advice, I would say, get yourself a record player, buy some vinyl, take a step back from the streaming services, and listen to music with some real depth rather than as background music. So turn the lights off and really listen to the song, listen to the lyrics, and really try to understand what the song and the lyrics is saying and what it's doing to you as you listen.
Wow.
Deep, deep listening,
Yeah,
and you'll enjoy music much more for it.
yeah, it's sort of allowing ourselves to experience the
Yeah,
music.
as a piece of meditation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you so much
You're welcome. Thank
for
you.
for doing this. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.